Welcome to Trek Table, your Sunday weekly podcast holding Trek space for
Black, indigenous, brown,
women of color,
queer or otherwise,
and your allies.
Hi, I'm your host, Allison Ordela.
Hi, I'm your co-host, Claudia.
Hi, I'm your co-host, Maya.
We're so excited for you all to join us for this episode 6 of the Trek Table, recorded in front of our live digital audience on twitch.tv/outpost13. What's up to all our friends? Bearded Cola, Vulcan Headbang, even Statterfield H is in the chat. Welcome. We're so happy you all are here. And thanks to all our friends who are watching at outpost13.org. And of course, those of you joining us on the audio podcast archive.
Our opening track for this episode is titled Chicana Skies by the band Quetzal off their album Quetzal. You'll be hearing several tracks by Quetzal throughout the episode of Trek Table. Follow them on on Quetzal. I'm in Oakland, but you can follow them at Quetzal Music on Instagram and see our show notes or the chat for a link to their merchandise and more.
Yes. So welcome to episode 006 of the Trek Table. I'm your host and show creator, Allison Ordela. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in and for showing up for this conversation with women of color about Star Trek. I'm so excited for us to sit down and dig into episode 5 of Star Trek Discovery, season 1. So I'm just going to prep everybody. Spoilers. If you have not seen this episode, you're probably going to want to watch it and then come back to us. You can check the archive and the audio podcast. Because today we are going to talk about this continuing journey of ethics in the time of Starfleet and the Klingon War. We're going to explore leadership and heroism and celebrate some of the milestones that happened in this season. This particular episode, we get the first F-bomb in Star Trek and our first non-hetero coupling of main characters. We're super excited to dive into that and the happenings in the Klingon prison and confront the Starfleet ethics and dealing with sentient beings. So lots of chunky things for us to discuss. And the last thing I just want to say is there's a content warning today. I wanna support that for folks who might need to know. This is an episode 5, Choose Your Pain, is the first of many episodes in Discovery that contains some kind of difficult content connected to torture or abuse. So I just want to prep folks for that, ask you to take care of yourselves and those around you. And we hope that, like so many things, we're going to get a chance to discuss this and jump in. So we're here to talk about episode 5, but in order to do that, we got to check in with this Trek Table that we've assembled, and we've invited 2 additional friends to our show today. Our first guest, you might know her from a couple episodes ago. We want to welcome back our guest co-host, Maya Mills-Lowe. Maya is a digital producer, podcaster, social justice activist, and administrative maven living in Tacoma, Washington. She'd also like to acknowledge she's living on the stolen lands of the Puyallup people. I want to welcome back Maya Mama. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here. I always love talking about Star Trek, and this is such a fascinating episode. So,
yes,
yay.
Yes. I love it. And in addition to Maya Mama, we're so excited to welcome back a friend to the Trek Table that those of us have been doing the prep for our physical launch. Claire Light had joined us in our pre-launch rehearsal recordings, and I'm so happy that you're back today, Claire. For those who don't know, Claire has worked in San Francisco's art and social justice communities for over 2 decades and will publish her first novel, Monkey Around, written under the pen name J.D. Jang this August. Super excited. Such a good novel. All right, welcome, Claire. How are you doing today?
I am great, Taylor. Thank you so much for having me.
Yay, super excited. So I want to welcome Claire and Maya Mama and welcome all who enter. Whether you're here on the chat with us on the outpost13.org view or listening to the audio podcast, welcome. Whether you're a newbie or raised in a Star Trekking family, welcome. Let's build some space together.
Whether you use Trek Table as your nerdy exploration or even a part of your self-care ritual, Trek Table is a weekly space to put down the world for a second and come into Trek space.
A space for Black, brown, indigenous, women of color to be a fan, a geek, a nerd, and explore the vastness of the Star Trek multiverse.
Yes, and Trek Table is also a place for allies to come and engage and explore as well. This is your opportunity as an ally to hold space and focus on the insights, perspectives, and experiences that we may not be familiar with.
And now that we are all here, we remind you that we seek to build an environment of mutual respect and listening in the room and in our chat. We understand that we'll disagree, and there's a lot of fun in that, but there's enough hate going on out there in the world, and we don't want that here. Keep your phasers on stun, please.
So all those things being true, want to invite you to the ritual and go ahead and plant your feet flat on the floor. And take a breath. In through your nose. And out through your mouth. And thanks for all that powerful breath. So let's check in with this beautiful five top of our Trek table assembled today. Table, can I ask you to go around and let's check in, share your name, your pronouns, any access check-in, and who or what are you holding Trek space for today? Maya Chinchilla, can I invite you to go first? How are you?
Hi, I go by she, her pronouns, and if you hear any growling or snoring, right now I hear some snoring at my feet, that is my coworker, Señorito Chorizo. I am holding space for those who are newer to Star Trek and Discovery fandoms. I'm coming in a little Star Trek femme, and as if Octavia Butler on Zaldua and Drag Race had a space baby.
Awesome. Thank you. And I want to welcome Maya Mama after you. How are you doing? Who or what are you holding Trek space for today?
Maya Mama is my name, and she, her pronouns. I'm holding Trek space for anybody who's felt that they had to lie about their love for Star Trek, lie about their nerddom and their fandom, and say that you're safe here. Welcome.
Thank you. Claire, what about you? Who or what are you holding Trek space for?
Hi, Al. I'm Claire. I use she, her pronouns. My access needs are met for the time being, but I might run out of spoons and I might have to duck out of the chat afterwards early. We shall see. And I'm holding Trek space for Andrew Cuomo's female staffers and our Trek future, in which their whole situation with sexual harassment won't be a thing.
Thank you. Claudia, welcome. What about you? Who or what are you holding Trek space for today?
Claudia Alec, gender pronouns they, their, she, hers. You can use those interchangeably. My access check-in is that I'm actually having a bunch of muscle twinges today. So if you see me pull a face, I'm not pulling a face necessarily at a strongly held Star Trek opinion. I'm probably pulling a face because one of my muscles is pulling me. Other than that, all of my access needs are met, and I'm holding space for the fans who are looking to see themselves reflected.
Yes, thank you. And I will close out this part of our ritual. Hi, everybody. I'm Dayla, and my pronouns are she, he, they, and Dayla. And I will acknowledge that my access needs are met right now. And I'm holding Trek space. I'm holding Trek space for Burnham in this moment, and this moment of her trying to reconcile what she knows to be true about the ethics of Starfleet and the tardigrade, and how she isn't able to communicate that effectively with Saru. So just that moment of like knowing something's wrong, but not being able to help the person you're talking to understand that, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So I want to hold that and say so with all of those different things, I hope that folks in the chat feel free to share with us, what are you holding Trek space for? We're definitely looking out for that. And any of our friends watching on outpost13.org, feel free to add us at Trek Table on Instagram or Trek Table 1 on Twitter. So as we head into this musical break, we want to know, who or what are you holding Trek space for today? Share your answers with us while we listen to a little bit of 20 Pesos by the band Quetzal. All right, so today's episode, Trek Table episode 006, we're going to explore Star Trek Discovery, Season 1, Episode 5, Choose Your Pain. And we're going to explore this episode in a couple of different ways. We're going to play popcorn recap. We're going to try it with friends who haven't done it before, so we'll see how fun that is. Claudia's got Trek table questions for us and is going to guide us through a little bit of conversation around Discovery design. Maya's back this week with Space Runway, and I'll lead us through some thematics and spoiler zones. We've got some great signal boosts talking about what women of color are doing around the world and some final thoughts. So just know all those fun things are coming up in this show.
And Trek Table honors that people may be on their own journey of viewing Star Trek Discovery. So we'll only discuss the things that we can remember have been unveiled up to through season 1, episode 5 of Star Trek Discovery. But the spoiler zone later in the show is going to give that fix to friends who have seen all of Disco all the way through to the end of season 3. So Disco fans who are here on the rewatch, we got you, and you'll get a special treat after Thematix.
Yes. Thanks, Maya. So let's take a second for this episode and review a little bit about what we're holding Trek Space for as we jump into to episode 5. Maya's holding Trek Space for folks who are newer to Star Trek and Discovery fandoms. Folks are holding space for those who felt lied to about their love of Star Trek and their love of nerddom and fandom. And we want to let you know you're safe here. We're holding space for Andrew Cuomo's female staffers and hoping for a future where sexual harassment won't be a thing. We're holding space for Trek fans who are looking to see themselves reflected. And we're looking for folks who are trying to express when something is not right to be heard, is how I will answer that. We also have folks who are freelancers who are filing their taxes today or in this next segment, and for all the folks with Guatemalan moms. That's some of what we're seeing in the chat. So I just want to hold all that up. You might have other additions. So all those things being true, let's go ahead and complete this part of the ritual. I'm going to invite you to take a breath in, and let's breathe in all those holding space things. Go ahead, breathe in and exhale. Thank you. All right.
And that brings us to our Trek Table questions posed to our Trek Table, assembled here by voice and video, and those participating at twitch.tv/outpost13. Question number 1 is, Tilly dropped an F-bomb. How do you feel about Star Trek characters swearing? And that was our sampling of Hollenbeck Gonzo by the band Quetzal, our theme song today for our Trek Table questions. Question number 1 was, Tilly dropped an F-bomb. How do you feel about Star Trek characters swearing? Come on, y'all. Tell us what you're thinking. Oh, I can see some folks in the chat. Okay, come on. But first, we'll start here with our Trek Table assembled. Claire, what's your take on this?
I'm almost indifferent. It underlines that we're in today and not in the future, because in 200-300 years we really should be hearing different swears. But I also think that fuck has lasted, several centuries already. So maybe it's a futuristic thing. I don't know. I don't really care that much.
All right, word. Like, you don't really care, but also, why don't they have new swears? I got you. Maya Mama, what's your take on this?
I thought it was great. It was appropriate. It wasn't gratuitous. Because I know that a lot of television programs are, trying to get gritty, and therefore putting swears where they don't need to go. And I thought that this was fine because, yeah.
Swears add grit. They add grit. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Dayla, what do you think?
I thought it was hilarious. I know people are used to watching Trek with their families or their kids, so this might limit that. But I also want to say I'm not mad at somebody being able to have a woman say science is fucking cool. So I'm about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maya, do you have any strongly held opinions on this?
I love a blurter, and Tilly is a blurter. She just says lots of things. I identify with that. I know what it's like to just, have those moments where it comes out, and even in a professional situation, And so I just love Tilly for that and her joy. And it's, and maybe it endears her to, at this point, Stuffy Stamets.
Oh, yes. Swearing can seem less stuffy. I like that. Now, I have a very strongly held opinion, but I'm going to hold off on it because I want to make some room for our audience. Can we hear from the audience? Could somebody just share something from the chat?
Sure, I got it. So Statterfield H is saying, if any character is going to get away with the F-bomb, it is going to be Tilly. Statterfield had a little bit of heads up in the spoilers, so knew it was coming, wasn't as shocked, but might have been taken aback. And thought that maybe it could have happened in like First Contact, the Next Generation movie. But we'll see what happens. And we want to say what's up to Susie Foreman, who jumped in to say hi. So all those things are true.
Ooh, this might not have been the first Star Trek F-bomb. This is what we're learning. We're going to need to do some more research on this, and we will be getting back to you. Return to future episodes. This is important information. My strongly held opinion is that in Star Trek, the original series, but the movies, Star Trek 4, one of the characters tells us they don't swear, and then swears poorly as a joke. And now when they swear, I'm like, what was wrong with Kirk that he couldn't swear? Was Kirk just weird? He must have just been weird because everybody's swearing. And that's my strongly held opinion on question number 1. Thanks to all who shared. Please like and subscribe to us in the Instagram and at Trek Table, and on Twitter at Trek Table number 1.
All right, so that theme song tells us that it is time for Popcorn Recap, and I was so excited about seeing what was happening in the chat that I missed a couple things, so thanks, Claudia, for that. All right, so look, here we go. Popcorn Recap for us. We think it's fun because it's 2 minutes to be able to share chunklets of plot from this week's episode.
And we will be talking today about Star Trek Discovery Season 1, Episode 5, Choose Your Pain. Story by Gretchen J. Berg, Aaron Harberts and Kemp Powers. Teleplay by Kemp Powers, and directed by Lee Rose.
Yes. So we hope Popcorn Recap is not just funny to us, but we hope it's funny to you, to let you in on it. Maya is a newbie, and this is like only the second time she's played recap with us, so we're holding space for that. Claudia and Maya Mama were raised in a Star Trekking family, and Claire is a deep canon head. And I'll just say, I like the minutia. So let's see how this goes in 2 minutes.
All right, Brandon, please set 2 minutes on the timer. Episode 4 in 2 minutes on the clock. Can we do it?
Incoming transmission.
All right, so this episode starts with Gabriel Lorca at the new space station. He's talking to the table of admirals. Captain Cornwell's like, what's up? Why are you doing this? They might know who you are. He's like, no, I'm cool. They have an interaction, and then he gets on a shuttlecraft. Oops, the Klingons capture him.
Oh, and then back on the ship, Vernon's like, ooh, like all this travel is hurting the tardigrade really bad. And Culbert's is like a medical officer, and he's like, yeah, like I can totally see that. And so both they go to Stamets to convince Stamets to stop hurting the tardigrade. And Stamets is not giving that medical officer a lot of attention.
And Lorca on his commute back from the admirals is taken by the Klingons and captured with another Starfleet officer he finds in prison, Ash Tyler. Who's this? And also human criminal Harry Mudd. They say the Klingons say choose your pain a lot, and it's like kind of, I don't know, is it kinky? Is it crazy? And they have to pick themselves or a different prisoner to take physical punishment. Ash is beat up bad. Mudd is spotless.
So Lorca reveals that he killed his whole crew. That gets back to L'Rell. Then we find out that Mudd's been spying and that Ash was being sexually assaulted by L'Rell. Shit got a little crazy.
And then Lorca is tortured by L'Rell in spiky, blood-tipped fabulousness, who wants the secret behind Discovery's new form of travel. But Lorca and Tyler escape before the Klingons learn anything, and they deliberately leave Mudd behind.
And they try to fly away, and then they can't. So Stamets has injected himself with the tardigrade DNA.
Oh,
Oh,
Almost made it.
okay.
We got super close, though.
We were really close, but
Yes.
how about we do one more point each? We froze a little bit on you, Dayla. Do you want to give us one more point?
Thank you. So, Stamets has inserted himself with the tardigrade DNA, and Tyler and Lorca have escaped and been swooped up by the Discovery.
And Saru has been like, I'm mad at you, I'm mad at you, I'm mad at you. It's been an emotional journey, and then he's like, you know what? I'm less mad at you, Burnham. How about you go free that tardigrade?
And then, wait, what? Stamets and Colbert are married. Stamets says he's okay, but his reflection doesn't walk away from a mirror when he does.
All right. So, that is the episode for today. That's the closest we've ever gotten. So I just want to give love to this table. Good job. Good job, 5. And if you, like me, enjoy reading people's recaps of the episode, we want to amplify and uplift Andy at Women at Warp. She's done the recap for this particular episode. We'll drop the link to Women at Warp's recap in our chat and in our episode notes. And that was Popcorn Recap.
Welcome to Discovery Design. Now, in this section, I want to, again, we're going to be talking about the Klingon torture area, so I just want to, again, do a little bit of a content warning for our audience members. But let's get into it. Let's talk about it for a few minutes. Lorca has been introduced to us as a character who's always he's always staged in these dark spaces. He's mysterious. He's kind of shady. I don't know about his story. And this setting has him being tortured. Does that have us see him in any different way? We're getting introduced to a character, Ash Tyler, through this lens. I'm just wondering, and also, what's the deal with torture? Let's talk about it. I'm going to open the floor up to anyone who wants to say anything.
Well, one thing I want to say about this is I know that they're giving the torture to the Klingons, but torture is not a Trek topic. It's not a traditional Trek topic. So this is more of this grittiness that they're trying to insert into Trek, to not only have torture, but to actively show torture within the regular species of the Trek universe. And I'm not sure if I'm really into that. I'm not sure if I really want my Trek to become grim dark in that way.
Maya, Mama, I know you have, because you mentioned 4 lights, so I know you have a potentially countering perspective on this.
I mean, I think that in a lot of ways it all depends on what your opinion of torture is, because I think that they do a lot of psychological torture, and that they have, in fact, featured torture, maybe not on screen, but the aftermath of what torture does to one in Star Trek The Next Generation, because there's a particular episode that features basically breaking a human being, which is and when it comes down to it, that episode was fairly dark for the 90s. Honestly. So, I think that torture as a narrative device can sometimes be boring, because a lot of times it's just for exposition, so that we know all the bad things that they did previously. But, I mean, they did well.
Well, I thought that they might be doing this so that we would like Lorca, because we see a bad thing happening to Lorca, so now we're on Lorca's side. So it felt like that might be a little bit of what was happening. And the same thing with Ash. Like, I'm supposed to automatically be on Ash's side because I'm introduced as Ash as being not only somebody who's getting tortured, but he's like in the cage. He's the best dude, because Mud is such a jerk.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
Ash does the same thing. I mean, there's two layers of that. There's the show making us like Lorca and Ash because they're being tortured, and then there's Ash making Lorca
Mm,
like him because he volunteers himself for torture.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will say I was caught off guard about and I have to remember I was caught off guard with this episode and how gritty and dark it was, and then I have to remember that it came out in 2017 in the height of the Game of Thrones ness, and just the way that there was so much violence in TV, and the way the stakes were so high at a television ecosystem level, and so it made me I did not like it. The sound effects are super impactful to me, but I'm starting to see disco in this context, and it's making me watch the journey that the writers are taking us on. It doesn't make it okay to me, but that context is helpful to me.
Yeah, it's really
Um,
interesting to me when I actually respond to something in media as like, oh no, I can't watch that. And I think that what's happening for me as I'm watching this first season, or it's a rewatch somewhat to me because I've watched some of it, but not all of it, is I also find it somewhat titillating. So I don't know if that's controversial, but in the sense that I already placed Laurel as, as like I was interested in her Klingon flirtation in last episode, and then how she's shifted this way, and just the more and more I learn about from what I knew way back when I first was watching mostly Next Generation Klingons, just kind of understanding Klingons as being, you know, aggressive and harsh and all this other stuff. So, normally as a topic, obviously I don't like torture, um, the idea of it, but I thought what was happening in this episode was revealing this other side of Laurel, and also, I'm always interested in how much I can take of watching a gadget being placed on somebody, and what that's going to do to them, how much they actually show us, and how much our minds just do the rest of the information, the fill in the
Mm-hmm.
blanks.
Oh wow, Maya, thank you for that. And I recognize that in this conversation I'm not giving us enough time to really get into the real design of it, but I think we all saw the Clockwork Orange moment and had like a physical reaction to that. Maya Mama, I just want to do a shout out and thank you for reminding me that in almost all of the Star Treks they do mental torture all the time. They do torture where it's like, oh, their minds are being played with and they're being tricked and then they're being lied to. But I'm also thinking about the mirror universe and its use of torture. They're using torture a lot. I'm thinking about how maybe they have the Klingons using torture because they want to make the Klingons seem like bad guys. I
yes,
see some. I'm
yes.
witnessing body language.
So I think that their use of Klingon torture is I'm trying to think of the right word, anachronistic. Is that the right word? Klingons don't generally torture. They're prisoners. It's not actually a Klingon type of thing. It's just something that Laurel decided to do. Um, uh, Torturing prisoners is seen as dishonorable, and I think that this was a way for the audience to be like Klingon bad. Whereas I will say that the Klingons do have many reasons for this war, and the Federation isn't totally shiny in all of this. So yeah, I think it was designed to make us go, ugh, Klingons, typical,
Okay, I wanna
gross.
make sure there's time for just a few more comments. Claire, please.
Just to respond to that, then they retconned in torture because Lorca's entire reason for killing his previous crew was to save them from Klingon torture. So it is a part of the new Klingon culture of this particular Trek that Klingons torture their prisoners, or maybe it's an aspect of this particular war, which is based on Takuvma's whole fundy idea of Klingonness and Klingon racial purity that they've introduced torture into their culture, but they haven't laid the basis for that, which is why I think it's illegitimate, grimdark bullshit.
Come on with it, Trek Table. You always bring it home. All right, I know that we would love to keep talking about this. We really must end this conversation, but we're going to have a chance to return to it, though. That is our time. I can't wait to share more insights with Discovery Design.
Yes, and if you are enjoying us here at the Trek Table, we remind you to join us on Facebook.com/Trek Table Podcast to keep up with us and join our conversation there.
And this brings us to Trek Table question number 2. What do we think about our first non-heterosexual main characters? Welcome back, everyone. We're here with Trek Table question number 2, Queer in Space. What do we think about our non-heterosexual main characters? And I already need to do a fix. I asked this question, and I know that the answer is these are not the first characters. They're not the first ones, but I do think they might be the first legibly queer characters that are obvious, and there's no pretending about it. But let's talk about it a little bit. Maya Mama, what you got? What are you thinking?
Well, I love me some Wilson Cruz. I mean, I don't even care what he does. He could just like sit in a chair, just like smiling occasionally, thinking about things. And I'd be like, this is amazing. But what I liked was the normalcy of it. They didn't hang a lantern on it. They weren't like, boom, 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 we got the gays. Burp, 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 burp. It was just, here is a couple, and ooh, surprise, they're married to each other. Like there was a weird energy, sure, that we were getting between the two of them earlier in the episode, but then it's just like, oh yeah, that's because they're married to each other. And I loved it. I thought it was great.
Claire, what are your feelings on our couple?
I love Wilson Cruz too. He's my high school gay best friend. I love that they started their relationship with a married people spat. Like that they start out by kind of ignoring each other because that's how married people have to do when they work together. And then they have a disagreement, and the whole disagreement is done in looks initially. And then it's underlined by Stamets saying to Culber, you sold it with a look. And it's like, yes, that's married people. I love that they start them right out of the gate as a married couple.
I'm pulling this up from the chat, y'all. Susie Foreman, I was a Spurk shipper and then a Spokoi shipper, and also TOS was really gay baited. Oh, I feel like we could again just do an entire episode on only this topic, because we could talk about there's a lot of iterations of queerness in all of the other Star Trek stories. But Maya, what was your take on this? Besides Wilson Cruz being the dreamiest.
Yes, I think you all know that. I mean, really, one of the ways that I was brought back into Trek is someone told me Wilson Cruz was going to be on Star Trek. So I'm just going to put it out there. And yeah, I mean, I love the subtext of their first initial meeting and then their text, overtly a relationship and working with a partner at work. I love how they're trying to negotiate that. And they both have their smoothness and their rough edges. Mostly, Culber is smooth, but Stamets is working lots of stuff out. So I am here for it. I love it. I mean, we're going to talk about that. It's intimacy moments of them being together at work and together in their, what are those rooms called? The space pods. I mean, they were in a bathroom together, like talking about their work day. That was wild to me.
I'm just going to bring something back up from the chat. The Jadzia Dax DS9 kiss was super empowering for so many lesbians. That is such a good observation. And it reminds me, I'm going to share a really quick story with y'all, okay? Because we can't tell all the stories, but here's one. So the guy who wrote The Trouble with Tribbles, he was like, I need to write a queer episode. And like somehow, like finally in the 90s, Roddenberry was like, I guess it's weird and creepy that we've been super heterosexist this entire time. I guess maybe it's wrong and we should stop. Alas, there were other folks working on the show that would thwart these plans. But this dude who wrote The Trouble with Triples, he wrote an entire episode that had like an entire like HIV subplot. Like the main plot was like a HIV metaphor, and it was called Blood and Fire, I think. And then they just sort of I think that we as people of color have experienced this thing when somebody hires you to do a job, but then makes it horrible and like makes it so it doesn't succeed. So like rewrite, and that episode had a couple that were obviously a couple in it, and then they finally got it done, but through the fan created Star Trek. I don't know if y'all have watched. It's really good. I think it's really good. So I recommend you watch this, and that was Claudia's small piece of queer Star Trek history.
I love it. I love Claudia's story time.
Dayla, how did you feel? Because this really did feel like the Jadzia Dex moment. It felt like a historic moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to echo what a lot of folks have been saying, and I want to hold up. Yeah, in the chat, we're seeing a lot of stuff on Twitch right now, so definitely a lot of queer fam in the chat and a lot of queer fam advocates in the chat. Yeah, Satterfield H is also talking about this wasn't the first non-hetero. I know we've been talking about that. For me, what I love is the way in which we see how they're already a couple. We got to see a little bit of it last episode with Culber fixing Stamets's nose. So we go from nose fixing to toothbrushing, and just the way that intimacy works. I'm super here for this queerness. And what I also appreciate is they feel like a queer couple I know. That there is some authenticity in the way that, and like what everybody's saying, like the looks, I'm just like, oh, snarky uncle, loving uncle, and then just like how they fit together. And so I want to hold up to what people are saying. Homeless McCoy was like in the Twitch chat, like, yeah, we would love to see them fall in love. So I'm hoping as the series goes on, without giving any spoilers, that we get to see more of them in love. So yeah.
And that was our Trek table question number 2. And so now is the time in our ritual where we invite everyone to move around in your seats and screens, because it is now time for our Trek table dance break. It's time for the dance break with Space Runway.
Some of the eye-catching looks from function to fashion in the 23rd century. Space Runway. Welcome to Space Runway. This week we're doing some highlights from Season 1, Episode 5. There are 10 looks today. So here we go. Are you ready? Look number 10. So many admirals, so many stripes.
Look at all the admirals around this Starfleet circular table. Admiral Katrina Cornwall and an unidentified black Vulcan admiral sit at this table full of brass, with Admiral Cornwall verbally kicking Lorca in the ass, trying to keep this rogue warrior and his super weapon in line. Check the badges. Admirals get the circle around their logo and extra gold piping in the detail on their shoulders.
And yes, I am wearing some sequin shoulders for my Admiral look today. Look number 9, choose your pain. Klingon guards.
So many details asking you to choose your pain. Maybe it's the wrist cuffs and the shoulder pads that look like a roller derby queen. All that metal and leather armor with soft flexi pants so you can bend down and grab your prisoners by the hair. Rocking the House Laurel crest in the middle of your chest that holds together that crisscross leather harness, giving us notes of He-Man or the finest leather daddies of West Hollywood or Folsom Street. We see you.
Look number 8, Laurel. This bridge called my batleth. So tender in the last episode, topping from the bottom. Now she's just topping. Descended from spies, Laurel shows us why Klingon women are the fiercer sex, better at getting under the skin of Starfleet enemies. Laurel continues to rock her white leather armor with a fabulous collar, long sleeve blouse, and a flourish of flames across her shoulder. No manicure for Laurel. Her red tips, oh my God, her red tips to her armor shoulder spikes instead. You know what I'm saying. It's been a while since I've had a manicure. All right. No, look, number 7. Harcourt, motherfucking Fenton Wood.
Welcoming this TOS character back in pirate style to the resort spa of his twisted mind on this Klingon prison ship with the green, red, brown color palette. Mudd is all aswash with his multi-buckle green coat, accentuated with braided leather shoulders. Even as a prisoner, Mudd is rocking rings on his fingers and knee-high boots shining in the golden light of Antares Minor. Still, Mudd is very well dressed for being in Klingon prison.
Look, number 6. Sentient Life Dream Team.
Ever the culturally raised Vulcan, Burnham is seeking the logical conclusion of this challenge with Kitty the Tardigrade. Burnham has all the human feels and decides to go straight to Dr. Culber. We're not mad at this first pairing of these beautiful and brainy folks collaborating to save sentient life, even if Saru and Stamets don't believe them at first.
Look, number 5. Owosukun and that undercut.
Check that hair. From the side, from the top, amazing hair architecture and the clean lines and bald undercut that make any time we see Lieutenant Osakun a glorious one. I mean, look at her. Ugh.
Look, number
Yes.
4. Regifting is the case.
This is how we keep from making waste in the universe. Clothing swaps and regifting. The last will and testament of their former Captain Giorgio, that is. Burnham sees that this is the gift that Saru really needs right now. Or maybe it is now the gift that will keep on giving. But this isn't the one on the Shenzhou, right? Because that would be too much headcanon to solve how it escaped the wreckage.
Absolutely. Look, number 3. Tardigrade has to be free. Or, tengo un bolita que me sube y baja.
Okay, so balled up and dehydrated, Kitty the Ripper Tardigrade just wants to be left alone after so much non-consensual drama. No more spore mammograms. Let the little water bear be. So we finally set her free. She is shiny, electric, and alive, and she is ready to roam across the stars. Maybe a little Denise Williams, 'cause she's got to be free, free, free. All right, Tardigrade, fly.
Excellent. Look, number 2. Red matching jammies like they're posting for a Christmas card.
Stop worrying, stop doctoring, and let's brush our teeth for the first time on Star Trek. Culber and Stamets in maroon matching Starfleet issue jammies. This intimate moment as Daddy Culber laments he is doomed to love a reckless maniac who will risk his life for glory. Swoon! The gay space daddy odd couple we have all been waiting for. Whoo!
Yes. And look, number 1. Crouching Saru, hidden Gaga boots. What flexibility. What balance. Legs for days. See how Saru has that Asian squat on lock as he inspects Stamets, who we think is dead. But no, he is spore drunk, laughing and carrying on, and all we can get is this shot of these amazing boots. How does the man stand? And that's Space Runway for this week. Little tongue twisters, some form, fashion, and function in the future.
Awesome. And if you want to continue to support holding Trek Space for women of color and Space Runway and all the fun things we get to do on this show, we remind you and invite you as an ally and a friend to support us on patreon.com/trektable. All right. So we've gotten through the show. We talked about a lot of different things. We started with popcorn recap. We started to braid things together with the Trek Table questions and Discovery design. We got a little bit of info in Space Runway. And now we want to take this deep dive into Thematix and kind of braid it all together. So I want us to talk a little bit about the title of the show, Choose Your Pain. I think that's going to give us some good context. And we're also going to talk about leadership and heroism. So let's talk about Choose Your Pain. Certainly one of the darkest Star Trek television episodes. I know we're starting to talk about torture and other kinds of things in other episodes. But when it originally came out in 2017, as I mentioned earlier, that Game of Thrones-ness that was happening, and certainly thinking about Star Trek in this larger science fiction television universe. But this thing, as we kind of reconcile what is discoveries on relationship to violence and what are we really trying to say, we see the violence in the hand-to-hand combat in the prison cell, but it's also so I'm just wondering, like, we talked about the torture, but I just want to talk about this title of Choosing Your Pain, other things that came up for us as we walk through the episode. Maya Mama, I wonder if you might have some thoughts to open us up.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed as if Lorca and Ash themselves were choosing to inflict pain. They killed quite a few. They killed 7 Klingons in 1 minute and 23 seconds with 1 severe injury. I mean, that's a lot of violence that they made that choice to inflict. And I do want to just point out that 5 of those 7 were plus the injury were all done by Lorca. And again, I will say, Lorca. That's all I'm gonna say. Lorca.
Mm-hmm.
We all
And
know
that
my
might be
opinions on him.
Mm-hmm. So maybe spoiler zone might be a little bit more for us to tease out with the Lorca. Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Claudia, I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about this title, Choose Your Pain? Other pain you want to talk about?
Well, I actually have been meditating on Maya's comment around a sort of S&M vibe that was happening in the energy with Laurel and her torture subjects, and how that's written in, how there's like a gendered, like if a female has power and that power is being inflicted with violence, it's always kind of sexual too in its creepy way. And it's interesting, like in the torture scenario, it's about having power and getting somebody to give over their power. So yeah, it just felt like there was a lot of interesting stuff, but it did feel tropey to me. It felt like I was experiencing some story beats that I always get in my science fiction. So I was ready for it, and it didn't surprise me.
Okay. Claire, what about you?
Just a quick note here. What is between this Trek and the Treks of the 90s that we use as reference points most often is the Iraq War and the Bush presidency. And what I see here, and I've been seeing in a lot of media in the last 20 years, is that the American public has come to allow violence, killing, especially extrajudicial killing and torture, if it's in the service of a war. And I'm not pleased to see that Trek has taken up that same value, but this very much reflects what's been going on in our pop culture in the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that context. Maya, other thoughts about Choosing Your Pain?
Yeah, I mean, I think I am coming to watching this particular season after jumping in on season 3, right? So I have that in what I am. I have that in the background, so I have different thoughts about where it's gonna go, and so I'm not holding on to. This is the only thing I'm watching each week. We are kind of going one by one back through season 1. Having said that, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of kind of dudeness in this. Also, Lorca's persona, he's kind of like the badass on the Klingon ship, breaking them out, and he's making a lot of those stances with the gun when he finally has a I was about to call it a stingray, but because my words are starting to jumble. Yes, thank you words. But just the stance, and he doesn't even seem to be fearful of the torture or of being taken. So I think that's That's also what I'm thinking about. And then just super random, I have been thinking about the floors too, how we saw the floors, and what and just I don't know, the design of it. We were just talking about design, but just the camera angles, the up angles, the down angles, it's all of these the close-up shots, and how that either brings us closer to that action, or gives us a farther away sense. So lots of little things that I'm still working out in terms of thinking about what does it all mean.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, kind of connecting that to what I heard also Claire talk about, was just thinking about how, yes, if the 90s Trek is connected to the Bush War and the Iraq War, we know that in some of the things I feel like I've read, the show creators acknowledge that this was also created in a Trumpian era, right? So we're not making this Star Trek in the Obama era of life. We're making it in the post-Obama Trumpian moment. And then I just can't help but to think about, all these, the violence that is existing, and what are the messages that we're getting, and what are the ways that we're seeing, just those questions that you all are asking about. Is this really where we want to see Trek go? And I think this connects to me to what we're seeing with the tardigrade, and what we're seeing in terms of sentient life being used to power the ship. And my shock and awe about the moments where Saru doesn't seem fazed by the fact that we're using a life being, a sentient life to, and we talk about the spore mammogram and just the physical pain, and the episode opens with Burnham having this nightmare from the point of view of the tardigrade, and I really appreciated that, because the minute we started to see this, I was worried. I was feeling it. So to actually see it happen, to see Burnham make that connection, I just feel like it opens up this moment of, that's also not what I fell in love with about Trek. I love Trek because of the Prime Directive, because of the ethics that we hold about not forsaking sentient life, I guess. That's kind of where it lands for me. So, yeah, go ahead, Claudia.
I think that this is in there, though. Like, this conversation is just giving me a light bulb moment. So I was kind of laughing about the sort of transformative justice, Oakland vibes that Saru and Burnham's exchanges were giving me, because I liked how you can tell that Michael Burnham, she's logical, she's got that Vulcan upbringing, but also, like, she chooses her pain. She's like, you know what? I don't want to have the pain of having a messed up relationship over a long period of time. I'm going to choose the pain of asking you right now. Do you still not trust me? And then they can have that conversation and that exchange. And I think it's telling that that was happening at the same time as the torture. I'm like, oh, I think that Discovery is comparing those two methodologies, maybe.
I also feel like Saru's toughness kind of performative, because he's trying to perform what he thinks a captain should be like, and hasn't been guided or is coached or mentored in the same way. And so it seems like he's trying to overdo it in order, and also is blinded a little bit by his distrust of Burnham, because he finally reveals that yes, he is mad, he is angry, he is jealous even, and he seems like he's trying to perform a certain type of leadership that maybe Lorca is also leaving that gap there, because Lorca's all bossy and mean. So Saru's trying to do that. But yes, I love the way Burnham does that to Saru, and then also when she twists her face at Stamets, and she's like, well, I'm trying not to set this record straight, because I am trying to help us all out, and I am trying to help you with your science that is super brilliant, but it's not working, and we're gonna hurt these animals and these micro animals and ourselves if we don't figure out something else. So I loved that moment too, between Stamets and Burnham, where she's like, I could tell you some more things, and then he pulls it back in his own kind of catty way as well, like, well, do you want to make this happen or not? So I almost feel like Stamets even knows that he's making a logical jump, because he's not based in feelings, at least on the surface.
Maya Mama, I saw your reaction. Yes.
If I could add, I think that this is a lot about the evolution of Star Trek, because all of these themes that they touched on today, the rights of sentient beings to be experimented on scientifically, uh, the what happens to people after a war. There's a lot about racism, about judgment, about even torture on Star Trek Deep Space Nine regarding after the war. But they did earlier in 90s Star Trek, they always talked about aftermath. They never talked about what was happening when it happened. And right now, I think that that's where we're moving towards is dealing with the issue while it's happening. And not and yes, also the aftermath of trauma. But letting us see the trauma is definitely very new.
Yeah, and then it's not resolved in just one episode, right?
No, because that's not how trauma resolves itself. Yeah, and it's kind of good.
I'm agreeing with half of what you just said, but I'm disagreeing with the other half, and I'm fully interrupting you, Daylock, just because I'm having a strong Star Trek opinion. I will keep my phaser on stun. I actually think that in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, they take us through the Dominion War, and we get to see some ugliness and weirdness in there that's useful and interesting. And the same thing with Enterprise. Enterprise also, I think, in actually a creepy Bush years kind of a way that was kind of making the audience be okay with the gross choices that Captain Archer was making. All that said, I'm agreeing with you, because I think that what's different about this is the way it's looking at torture. I mean, not torture, trauma, and how trauma impacts us. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk.
Yes, and I want to acknowledge that several of us could have TED Talks on this particular episode. I think it totally makes sense. Yes, we're talking about the Cardassian occupation in Deep Space Nine, and so I want to acknowledge that we have a chunky spoiler zone today because 4 of the 5 of us have seen all the way through the season. So I know we did not get fully to the leadership and heroism conversation, but I just want to ask maybe one sentence if anybody wants to drop that. I'm going to particularly look at Maya C because you're going to not be in spoiler zone. But we also have time and final thoughts as well. So super chunky. Awesome. Thoughts on leadership and heroism in this episode, Maya?
I mean, I like that there's complexity to it. We don't have these binaries of good and evil in the same ways that, other storytelling always wants to push us towards. And I like the messiness of it. Honestly, I'm here for it. That's why I call it my space drama. And I could say more in my final thoughts if I remember exactly what I was going to say. But that's what I've got.
Awesome. Anybody else non-spoiler conversations around leadership that we want to uplift?
Well,
Go ahead, Claire.
I just wanted to put in there that in this episode, everyone is operating on a different paradigm of heroism, and all of them are shown within the episode to be at least somewhat false. Like Saru's paradigm of heroism is literally a computer program of what other captains have done. And at the end, he cancels the program because he realizes that that's not sufficient. And Burnham is still operating on this bizarre Kirk-like cowboy thing that she started with at the beginning of the season, where she hauls off and does these things on her own without thinking it through and without asking anybody, and ends up making things worse. And I don't know why they're writing Burnham this way, because it makes no sense within her characterization. But and it keeps happening. Like, everybody does something heroic according to their lights, and there's a blowback on themselves or on everyone else. Stamets does a heroic thing, and there's a blowback. There's a hint at a blowback at the end of the episode. Lorca does a heroic thing, but kills a bunch of people for it and leaves Mudd behind. And Tyler does heroic things, but he's survived that long because he's compromised himself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think you get the picture.
Amazing things to think about. I appreciate you kind of setting us up for that, in thinking about that. And I want to say that this is, I think, why I and several of us on this table probably love Star Trek. That there are always things to talk about. There are always things to explore. And even though we think we can have a brief conversation about torture and ethics in the time of a war and sentient life being an experiment, we know that these are deep, juicy issues. And so I just want to hold space for that. That these are probably things we're going to keep talking about as the next set of episodes unfold. So I want to thank the table assembled and folks in the chat. The chat's been going crazy, like all kinds of things being held up around Saru and disregarding the pain of the tardigrade and how this is part of what he's lost in terms of his ethics in order to keep himself safe. Folks also mentioning that this is also a question around the Prime Directive. Is it just about civilizations or is it also about sentient beings? So lots of things for us to talk about. And I just want to say thanks to everybody for being in this conversation with us. And if you haven't had a chance to check out the Short Treks episode with the tardigrade, we invite you to do that. All right, so Thematix isn't going to be complete until we get into the spoiler zone, and we want to support that folks who are watching our live digital recording session either on twitch.tv/outpost13 or on outpost13.org. We're going to give you some visual cues so that you can navigate this with us. If you're listening on the audio podcast or you're just listening, this spoiler zone is going to be 7 minutes long, so it's a little bit longer because we know there's some chunky things to discuss in a spoilery way. So when I say go, we're gonna turn the spoiler zone on. Maya C is gonna go away, and we're gonna have a 7-minute convo about some of the things that are going on in this episode that we want to chunk into. So here we go. If you're watching us, we're gonna ask you to turn your volume down, and if you're listening, we're gonna have 7 minutes on the clock. So get ready. Here we go. Spoiler zone in 3, 2, 1. All right, last warning. We're talking about spoilers from all of Star Trek Discovery. So here we go. Open it up. Who wants to jump in first?
This just occurred to me during this show, which is that did L'Rell actually sexually assault Tyler? Or is that Tyler remembering Voke's intimacy with L'Rell and assuming that this was him being sexually assaulted? And like,
that's what I think it is.
How many issues does that unspool?
Yes,
Lots of agreement.
100%.
Go.
I'm also curious about Mirror Universe. If you're in the Mirror Universe, you must be used to torture all the time because they're always doing the torture booths. So I feel like since Lorca is actually from the Mirror Universe, that's why the torture's no sweat to him. He's just like, oh, this is what I do all the time. This is fun for me.
We literally see that. We see that in a later episode where he is put into that pain box for a very, 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 very long time, and he's cool. He's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't damage him in any way. Now I call the team Tyler and Lorca Team Duplicity because not one of them is honest. One of them doesn't know he's being dishonest, but the other one is straight up dishonest. And you can see the manipulation when you know who Lorca is. You can see how he's using that, like, you know, I'll take the pain for you. I'll do this type of bullshit, frankly, that he's doing that to ingratiate himself to Tyler. Also, why do these men have to be so deceptive with Michael Burnham? Michael Burnham just I'm glad that this is something that changed, but it was just like, let's put liars with her, and I just found that to be sad and gross.
Oh my God, that's another mirrored moment where where Lorca was actually her lover, but is now playing the part of her like her co-conspirator, co-crew member, and then Tyler is actually her her like opposite number, like her opponent, her enemy, but he's playing the part of her lover now. And and so they're both like, yeah, it's because she's the center of power in this story. She's the center of power and action and decision making in this story.
And I just want to, I mean, I'll just say, going back to that question of like, does Tyler know, like, when is Voke in charge, and like, is that flashback? I'm just thinking about, I think it comes in the next episode, or in episode 6 or episode 7, where Tyler actually has the flashback and we see Laurel sitting on top of him. Is kind of the image that I remember. I haven't rewatched the next set of episodes yet because I'm trying to pace, but so I think there's that. And then, yeah, what you just said, Claire, that the parallel setup of Lorca as her lover in the mirror universe, and just all these creepy moments where I'm like, wow, Jason Isaac really layered some stuff in. Like, he wouldn't let Burnham out of the spore cube a couple episodes ago because he was like, and then she's like, I'm not who you think I am. And he's like, well, I know you better than you think I do. And so just all of that innuendo. And then that last thing that Harry Mudd, at some point, Mudd says to Lorca, I'm a survivor just like you. And while we were watching it, it made me just wonder, like, how much does Mudd know? Or is just Mudd reading that Lorca is just, he's not vibing like a Starfleet captain? So those are some of the stuff I'm like,
That's what that moment looked like to me. It looked like Mudd is like looking and being like, I see you and you're just like me. We're the same. And I saw the first watch, I saw him as a character be like, oh, I'm concerned about this. Maybe I'm learning something bad about myself and I'm now going to spend the rest of the season changing from this. When in fact, what we were seeing was him being like, oh, you see me, I better hide better.
Well, I think actually, I think it's more that Trek is giving us something that's happening in this universe that's mirroring what's happening in the mirror universe. Because I think what Mudd was referring to was that he knew that Lorca had killed his own crew, and but then there's that resonance behind it because he's seeing something in Lorca that he doesn't know he's seeing. Sorry, Maya.
Game recognizes game.
Yeah.
I mean, we had two liars. He's like, I know you're a liar. I don't know what you're lying about. I don't know what it is, but you are a liar. And where you're coming from is not an honest place. Like, I'll let you do you, but then he screwed him over. Mudd got screwed over. Couldn't have happened to a better guy.
But Maya, I think that's why I just had this idea while you were talking because of what you said, but I think that's why he got left behind. I think he recognized, like, the captain was like, oh, you see who I am. I need to make sure you're nowhere around me because you will mess my game up.
And that is 100% something that a Starfleet officer would never do. What he did to Mudd, a Starfleet officer would never leave someone behind with the enemy to be tortured. They would take them with them and take them into custody. That is what they would do. But Lorca did not do that. Tells you a little something about him.
Can I transition us in this last minute and 20 seconds? Okay, can we talk about the Stamets arc and like what we're seeing about pouty boy Stamets and just how spoiled he is? And I'm just really struggling. Like, I love this moment of Culber and Burnham. And we talk about it in Space Runway. This is the first time we see their alliance. I'm thinking about the end of season 3 where she gets to be captain and he's all looking proud and all that stuff. So anybody thoughts on the Stamets moment? And like, I just am remembering he's not a great guy in season 1. Like, ugh.
Can I be honest? Is he ever a great guy? I mean, I love Paul Stamets, but he's never a great guy. He's always the entitled white man. That's sort of his character. You know, he does do the right thing eventually, but you gotta really like pull him through to see everybody else's point of view. I just don't think. I think this is just the beginning of Paul. Paul does. I mean, he improves. He does grow and improve. But also, was there any actual real playback or payoff from creepy Paul in the mirror? Because I don't remember.
Oh, there will be.
Yes.
There will be. There is?
There
okay.
will be.
Because I couldn't remember. Good to know.
No, that's his mirror. But anyway, Stamets actually is a scientist who is trapped in a war zone. And they make that clear. They've taken his science and put it in the service of violence and weaponry, and so that's why he's being such a bitch.
Yeah. Well said.
Yes, and I know we have so much to say, and somehow 7 minutes is not enough. So I want to say thank you. Our timer went off. I want to say thanks and ask Brandon to bring back our spoiler zone friends.
Transfer of data is complete.
That was fantastic, Claire.
Yes. So, welcome back, Maya C. Thank everybody. Thank you all for joining us. We're starting to get into the chunkies of season 1, and I'm so excited about that. Thanks everybody for joining us on the spoiler zone. And Maya and our other listeners, welcome back. We're so happy to have you back. And
Did you say anything interesting?
So much.
I didn't.
So much.
I'm kind of mad, but I feel it's delicious to kind of be like, ooh, they're talking without me.
Yes. And as soon as you get through season 2, you'll be ready to go back and listen to all the spoiler zones for Trek Table, because we're trying to honor that trajectory for you and all of our friends who are new to Star Trek Discovery. So I just want to say welcome back to the folks from who are not in spoiler zone, and just say those are our thoughts on Thematix on Star Trek Discovery season 1 episode 5, Choose Your Pain.
Oh, and now we have the pleasure of heading into our final Trek question, number 3. So we're going to hear a little bit more of the track Hollenbeck Gonzo by the band Quetzal as we ponder this. Empathy is dramatic. So we have 2 moments with these cool directorial kind of choice shots. We've got the dream sequence where we have 2 Burnhams, and one of the Burnhams is screaming. And then at the end, we have this in shot with the mirror Stamets. And like, is mirror Stamets a different Stamets? What is going on? Are these creative directorial choices? Is something weird happening in this universe? Are you confused? Tell us in the chat. Respond in the chat. This brings us back to Trek Table question number 3. I hope y'all are responding in the chat. Empathy is dramatic. So we've got these 2 cool moments. We've got the dream sequence at the top and the double Stamets at the end. Was it confusing to you, or did the visual choice give you ideas about what's possibly happening? This is a chance for headcanon. This is a chance for complaining. I want to hear all the opinions. Maya Mama.
So, Michael is empathy and logic incarnate. I mean, she's like the 2 of them having a little baby, and that's Michael Burnham. It's impossible for her to think to not think of others, and we see that with the 2 Burnhams, because every time the tardigrade screamed, she felt the pain that the tardigrade was going through. Poor little kitty. And I mean, it'll pay off, I guess, the Stamets thing. I thought it was more creepy than cool, and more creepy and also slightly confusing. But yeah.
Claire, what was your take on these two moments?
Well, I kind of felt like Burnham's dream was really more guilt than anything else, but she also does have intuition, and I think that might be her science superpower, is intuition, which a lot of people talk about as, science is a creative pursuit, as well, just as creative a pursuit as art, because you have to be able to make intuitive leaps and to be able and then follow them backwards using the scientific method. And so I think that's her superpower as a science officer, is her intuition. So her intuition is showing there, but also her guilt. And I think she's, throughout this entire season, she's carrying tremendous guilt, and we don't always see it shown like really, really apparently. And as far as the ending scene with Stamets mirror looking back at him, I can't, anything I have to say about that is a spoiler, so I'm just going to leave it.
Yes, I understand. We've got a great comment from the chat that's saying that this is about hashtag why twins, and saying that also I think it's about dualities. Yes, there's like that's what I was saying, like directorial choices. It's interesting. Maya, what was your take on these 2 moments?
It reminds me, the last episode was when she's even when Burnham is just looking in the mirror, there's twin Burnhams there. So interesting about that. She's looking at the uniform that has no badge on it. And this time it's a dream. I also have been thinking a lot. I need to go back into some readings and find where this comes from. So loosely based on Angela Davis's work, she has some moment where she's writing about, slavers and enslaved, and she's kind of pointing to how we're all implicated, and that we, whether we're showing it or not, that trauma of oppressing others or of inflicting pain on others is something that we have to work through, that is there, so it's not that we have to replace or recenter that, the people that are inflicting pain in the center, but that all of us are implicated, right? That we are, if we're going to be doing something that is affecting another being, it's going to affect us in some sort of, it's going to challenge our humanity. And again, whether we're or not, we're just repressing it and moving on and becoming less connected to our emotions. So that's one of the things that made me think of. And then also, Stamets, I loved it, that moment, because he's spore drunk, right? After making that jump, merging with his own science, and we're going down a rabbit hole because he leaves, his image is still there, and everything is not okay. Quick fix is not fixed.
I love how you just said rabbit hole too, since this is a season that keeps referencing Alice in Wonderland, it feels like. There's a big old comment in the chat. Dayla, I definitely want to get your take on this. Should I chat first, you, or you, then chat? What should we do?
Can I share the chat? Because I actually want to jump off what our friend Satterfield H is saying. And what we're hearing in the chat is like different folks' reaction to this moment. And one of the things that Satterfield raises up is not being able to understand that moment with Stamets at the end, like thinking that there's something to him still being in that mirror, but not having enough context and not wanting to jump to any conclusions. So I want to just say, yes, hold on to that in a non-spoiler way. And yes, to what you just said, Claudia, there's a lot of Through the Looking Glass, Alice in Wonder references. We have Burnham crawling through the Jeffries tubes, quoting Alice in Wonderland as her way to kind of center herself and keep herself going in forward motion. What Tien said in the chat, hashtag yay twin. So that's the other thing, is like, what are these moments where we acknowledge our twin selves, our inner selves, and these kind of good and bad sides of our inner light. But I just want to say, yeah, I'm here for all the looking glass moments. And as someone who is named Allison, Alice in Wonderland is forever in my life. And so I just am having a personal joy around. Yeah, dude, I'm here for the doubles. Let's go. I'm excited for episode 6, so I'm here. Let's go.
Oh, well, thank you to everyone, and those were our Trek table questions.
So we strive to hold Trek space for Black, Indigenous, Brown women of color, and we want to amplify resources and highlight the work of women of color, content creators, community builders, and world shapers. And today we have three sets of things that we want to hold up. So I'm going to invite Maya to go first.
We want to amplify one more time CARAVANA, a digital art show mobilizing Central American art, which starts March 10th and goes through April 15th. The opening is going to be online, digital, March 11th. So this is going to represent and talk about art from 1984 to the present. It's a multidisciplinary traveling exhibit that centers on U.S. Central American artists living in California as well as across the United States to examine their lived experience in relation to the impact of mass migration, family separation, and the legacy of political action and solidarity with the people of Central America. And it can be viewed again online through the virtual gallery experience dropping March 10th. Opening night performance is on Thursday, March 11th, and look for more via the exhibition link at somarts.org.
Awesome. Thank you, Maya. And now, Maya Mama, you want to tell us about a great new podcast that's going up?
Yes, Trek Table wants to support and hold up our friends at Kearney Street Workshop, KSW, as they prepare to launch We Won't Move, a living archive, a podcast that brings racial, Asian, Pacific American artists, curators, and activists to the forefront. Once the anti-eviction rallying cry for the International Hotel in the 1970s, We Won't Move, a living archive, features hosts Michelle Lin, Dara Katrina Del Rosario, and Kazumi Chin as they illuminate the legacies of intergenerational APA arts activism. Season 1 launches March 9th. Check kearneystreet.org for more information.
Yes, upholding the radical Asian Pacific American artists, curators, and activists. And connected to that, I'm going to ask Claire to share a little bit about our friends at Pasifika Transmissions.
So Pasifika Transmissions, presented by the Pacific Island Ethnic Art Museum, is a monthly distance learning series that invites indigenous artists in our community to visit the archives and develop a video, quote, transmission, end quote. This is an incredible gift, especially for Pacific Islanders living away from home, because PIEAM is the only museum in the contiguous United States with a mission to amplify the collective wisdom of the people of Oceania. View all of the artists featured in the series on their Facebook page at Pasifika Transmissions, and Pasifika is spelled Pasifika. Transmissions is spelled normally.
Awesome. So thank you. And we'll drop all those links in our chat as well as on our socials. We want to amplify and signal boost all of that. And if you have a woman of color content creator, an event, or something important that you want us to amplify, feel free to let us know in a DM at the Trek Table on Instagram or at Trek Table 1 on Twitter. Or if you join our mailing list, you can always send a reply to our mailing list. And that is our signal boost for Trek Table episode 6. And we want to say thanks again to the band Quetzal for that track, Perra Caliente, with the @ sign at the end. And I want to say thanks to everybody for joining us for this hearty, fruitful conversation on our 6th episode of the Trek Table. And as is the case every week, we close our show with final thoughts from the table. So, Table, I'm going to ask you to go around and give us your final thoughts for this episode. Maya C., I'm going to ask you to go first.
Andorian tonsillectomy, Laurel's accent, and is there toothpaste in space? That's what I got.
Thank you. Claudia, can I invite you to go next? Your final thought for this episode.
Final thought for this episode is that I watched the same Star Trek episode 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and I watch Star Trek like it's the I Ching, like it tells me something about myself in the day, right? And I watch it with this table, and I see a completely new set of ideas and possibilities. So I just can't wait to watch the next episode and reflect on it with y'all.
Awesome. Maya Mama, as one of our guests for today, can you share your final thought with us?
My final thoughts is that this is an education episode. We just learned a lot about certain members of the crew and who they are and who they are going to be. So I just look forward to further episodes to expand upon that.
Awesome. And Claire, our other guest for today, your final thoughts on this episode?
I've been talking behind the scenes a lot about how disappointed I am that they redesigned the Klingons, not just physically and visually, but culturally as well. And I'm still not totally okay with it, but I see what they're doing by using this bizarre new Klingon fundamentalism, this Klingon racial purity to reflect back on what's happening with Trumpism and MAGA and the kind of fascism that results from that kind of political statement and the fascism and the violence that results from that kind of political statement. So I'm not entirely down with the way that they're doing that and with the way that they've screwed up Klingons again, but I just wanted to take a note of that and hold a little Trek space for that as well in the future to see where that's going.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And I want to hold up some final thoughts that we're hearing in the chat. Want to just assure Satterfield H, no, we didn't talk about the tribble in this episode, but last episode, we invite you to listen to our audio podcast. We talked about thinking we saw a dissected tribble. So we have seen that tribble. We do love to echo that. And I just want to say that one of my final thoughts of this episode is when I saw the title, Choose Your Pain, it made me think about gender and the way in which people might be raised to absorb pain, and the way in which we give messages to people of different genders about how to deal with pain, and that choice, am I going to hurt myself or am I going to hurt somebody else? And the way that as leaders, I see leaders in movements all the time trying to step up and hold space and take away pain from community, but we still have to work it out. We still have to balance it out. So I'm in that thought. And then I'll just say the final thought is we just want to hold up our excitement that NASA and their Perseverance rover, when it landed on Mars, they have named the site of the landing the Octavia E. Butler landing site. So we just want to hold up and give love to Octavia Butler.
Yes.
We're super excited about this. So those are all of our final thoughts for season 1, episode 5, Choose Your Pain.
Big thank you to all for joining us for Trek Table. Please don't forget to sign up for our mailing list at trektablepodcast.com.
Yes, and you can support us by visiting patreon.com/trektable.
Thank you all, and we invite you to like and subscribe to us on Instagram or Facebook at Trek Table, and on Twitter at TrekTable1. Join our conversations there, and please comment using the hashtags #TrekTable, #BIWOC Trek, #Star Trek Discovery.
And find us now on Trek Table Podcast is on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes, and we just want to share thanks and gratitude. Thank you to our regular co-hosts, Claudia and Maya, and our special thanks to our special guest hosts today. Thank you to Maya Mills-Lowe, a.k.a. Maya Mama, and Claire Light, a.k.a. Claire. Thank you all for sharing your insights and holding your insights and thoughts with us today. So as we get ready to close this ritual, we just want to go back to the top and think about what we've been holding space for. We've been holding space for folks who are newer to Star Trek and Discovery and their fandoms. Whether you're a little bit Star Trek fam or you are the space baby of Octavia Butler, Anzaldúa, and the Drag Race, welcome. Holding Trek space for anybody who's felt like they've had to lie about their love of Star Trek and their nerddom and fandom to say you are safe here. We're still holding Trek space for Andrew Cuomo's female staffers and hoping for a future where sexual harassment is not a thing. Holding Trek space for fans who are looking to see themselves reflected and those who are wanting to explain their positionality about ethics and still don't feel heard. We'd also like to, at this time, say a special thanks to our Trek Table production team, executive producers Allison Dela Cruz and Luzma Mindajadiwala, co-producer Arthur Wong, and our production coordinator Brandon Chang, artist coordinator Terry Hashimoto, social media manager Isil Borlasa, and our stage manager Ariana Michelle.
Deep gratitude and thanks to Outpost 13 and their parent organization Outside In Theater, with extra thanks to Jessica, Paul, Matt, Arlo, and Alex. Thanks also to Geekish Network, our exclusive partner on Clubhouse. Thanks to Francois Collado and Visual Communications. And thanks to all of our friends across the Star Trek universe.
And finally, the deepest thank you to you folks joining us on outpost13.org or live at our twitch.tv/outpost13 chat. And those of you listening on our podcast, I'm so excited. Thank you for showing up in the conversation centering women of color in Trek. And Trek Table is a service mark of De La Projects, LLC.
Thank you all so much for coming to the Trek Table. Let's close this ritual. Let's go ahead and ground yourself one more time. Thanks to all the Trek nerds in the chat. Take a breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Next week, we're going to talk about episode 6, Lete, so we hope you watch it on Paramount Plus now. That's your new network. Thank you for holding Trek Space with us, and we look forward to holding Trek Space with you again soon. Have a great week. See you next time.